Ladies and gentlemen, why do we hurt when someone pulls away? Why does their silence feel louder than our own thoughts? We live in a world where connection is everything. Likes, messages, validation, but somewhere along the way we confused connection with dependency. We've made our self-worth a reaction to someone else's actions. Today, I want to challenge that, not because relationships don't matter, but because you matter more than your attachment to anyone else. We must ask ourselves a difficult but necessary question: why have we handed over the key to our emotional well-being to someone else? Because once we understand the why, we can start to change the how. Let's begin. From the time we're young, we're taught to seek approval. Parents, teachers, friends. We are rewarded when we behave the way others want us to. We are praised when we perform, when we please, when we meet expectations. Slowly, almost invisibly, we begin to associate our value with the feedback we receive. And if we don't unlearn that pattern, we carry it into adulthood, into our relationships, our careers, even into how we see ourselves. But here's the true thing: you are not the reflection in someone else's eyes. Your worth is not a score, it's not conditional, and it doesn't fluctuate based on who chooses to show up for you or who doesn't. When we become emotionally dependent on others, we give away the power to define ourselves. We wait for someone to validate us before we believe in ourselves. We make someone else's presence the proof that we're lovable, important, or enough. And that's where we begin to suffer, not because we love too much, but because we forget where love is supposed to start from within. Emotional dependency whispers that we're only okay if someone else is okay with us. But that's a fragile kind of existence where our peace is constantly threatened by someone else's moods, decisions, or absence. It's not love. It's fear dressed up as attachment. And what fear wants most is control. So we text again even when they don't reply. We lower our standards just to keep the peace. We walk on emotional eggshells because we're terrified of losing the connection we believe defines us. But what if we turned inward? What if we stopped waiting for others to affirm what we already are? What if we started showing up for ourselves with the same loyalty and intensity we give to everyone else? To know your worth is not to become arrogant. It's not about being above others or pretending you don't need anyone. It's about recognizing that your value is inherent, not earned through performance or maintained through people pleasing. It's about understanding that you're not broken if someone doesn't choose you. You're not less than because someone stopped calling. Their inability to see your value doesn't make you any less valuable. If someone hands you a diamond and calls it a stone, it's still a diamond. The name they give it doesn't change its nature. So how do we begin to know our worth independent of others? It starts with awareness. Catch yourself in the act. Notice when your mood depends on someone's reply, when your day is ruined because of someone else's silence. Those are not signs of connection. They are signs of overattachment. They are reminders that you've placed your emotional well-being in someone else's hands. Next, practice choosing yourself. That might sound abstract, but it's very practical. Choosing yourself means honoring your needs even when it risks disappointing others. It means resting when you're tired, speaking up when something hurts, walking away when something repeatedly disrespects your peace. It's in the little moments, saying no when you mean it, staying home when your soul needs it, not apologizing for your truth. And perhaps most importantly, stop outsourcing your self-talk. If you wouldn't say something to your best friend, don't say it to yourself. Be kind in your internal dialogue. Be curious, not critical. You are growing, healing, evolving. That deserves compassion, not condemnation. The more you affirm your value internally, the less you will chase it externally. And what's powerful is this: once stop needing people to validate you, you start attracting people who do it naturally. Because you're not desperate for it. You're not clinging to anyone. You're already full. A healthy relationship is never built on dependence. It's built on interdependence. It's when two whole people choose to walk together, not because they can't survive apart, but because they truly want to be together. That starts with you. So remember this: you are not a project to be fixed, not a role to be filled, not an emotional burden to be carried by others. You are a human being with intrinsic value. Before the applause, beyond the rejection, without conditions. You don't need to be chosen by others to choose yourself. And once you do that, truly, consistently, you'll stop begging for the kind of love you were always meant to give yourself first. Emotional dependency doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's not something we suddenly wake up with one day. It's a learned pattern, formed quietly over time, often rooted in past experiences that taught us one dangerous idea: that we're not enough on our own. To understand emotional dependency, we have to stop blaming ourselves for feeling needy or insecure. That doesn't solve anything. What we need to do is pause and ask, why am I so afraid to be emotionally alone? Think back. not to shame yourself, but to observe. For many people, emotional dependency stems from childhood environments where love was conditional. Maybe affection was only given when you performed well, looked a certain way, or didn't speak up. Maybe the people who were supposed to protect you were inconsistent, present one moment, distant the next. And in that inconsistency, your nervous system learns something dangerous. Connection isn't guaranteed, and love can leave at any time. So what do? We adapt, we become hyper-aware of others' emotions. We try to please, to fix, to earn love by being everything for everyone. And it works until it doesn't. Because underneath that pattern is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear that without someone else's approval, we don't matter. This fear carries into adulthood, and without realizing it, we recreate the same emotional dynamics. We overinvest in people who underinvest in us. We confuse anxiety with love, inclining to relationships that make us feel needed, even if they don't make us feel safe. But once we understand the root, we gain the power to break the pattern. See, emotional dependency is not about love. It's about survival. Somewhere along the way, your brain decided that being emotionally connected to someone, anyone, was the key to feeling secure. And if you've never been taught how to self-regulate, how to feel okay in your own body and mind, then other people become the only way you know how to feel calm. That's why their silence triggers panic. That's why you replay every word of a conversation, trying to figure out what went wrong. You're not crazy. You're trying to make sense of a nervous system that's been wired for threat, not peace. So what do we do with this knowledge? First, we stop personalizing it. Emotional dependency doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It's a signal that there's something deeper going on that needs your attention, not your judgment. Second, we examine the beliefs underneath our behaviors. When you feel rejected, what story do you tell yourself? I'm not good enough. I'll always be alone. They left because I'm too much. Those stories aren't facts. They're scripts written long ago, and you're allowed to rewrite them. But you can't rewrite a script you haven't read. That's why awareness matters. Third, we start creating emotional safety within ourselves. That means learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. It means building rituals that bring you calm without relying on someone else. It means noticing when you want to reach out, not because you truly want to connect, but because you want to avoid feeling anxious. You begin to ask yourself powerful questions. What am I hoping to get from this person that I'm not giving myself? Is it reassurance? Is it love? Is it presence? Then you practice giving that to yourself, slowly, imperfectly, compassionately. Understanding the root also means acknowledging that some people benefit from our dependency. Some relationships thrive not on mutual love, but on imbalance. When we are dependent, we often tolerate less than we deserve because we fear being alone more than we value being respected. But growth comes when we reverse that, when our peace becomes more important than anyone's presence, when we realize that choosing ourselves might feel like loss at first. But in reality, it's freedom. Emotional independence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean building walls or never needing anyone. It means creating a solid foundation within yourself so that you don't collapse when someone walks away. It means knowing you can feel deeply and still stand firmly. It means loving others from a place of wholeness, not from a void. And that shift begins the moment we stop asking others to fix what we haven't explored in ourselves. So take a breath. Be curious, not critical. Emotional dependency is a signal. And when we understand its root, we're no longer trapped by it. We're guided by it. Not toward more people, but toward deeper healing. Because when you understand where your patterns come from, you don't just react anymore, you choose. And that choice is where your power lies. Many people say they are in love, but what they're really in is attachment. And while love and attachment can look similar on the surface, constant thinking, intense feelings, the desire to be close, they are fundamentally different at their core. Love is expansive. It gives space. It allows freedom. Love says, I care about your well-being, even when it's not tied to me. But attachment is driven by need. Attachment says, I need you to make me feel okay, because I don't know how to feel okay on my own. This distinction matters because confusion between the two is one of the biggest reasons we stay stuck in painful relationships. We call it love, but it's really fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of losing our emotional anchor. When you're emotionally dependent, it's easy to mistake someone's presence in your life for proof of your worth. And so when they pull away, it doesn't just feel like distance. It feels like a threat to your identity. Love is not supposed to feel like survival. It's not supposed to feel like you're gasping for air every time they don't respond, or like your world is falling apart when they disappoint you. That's not love. That's attachment. And it often comes from a deep, unhealed part of us that's still searching for stability. To distinguish love from attachment, We have to understand what each one is based on. Love is about giving, not just taking. It's about seeing the other person for who they truly are, not who we need them to be. Love respects boundaries, embraces growth, and honors individuality. Love doesn't demand constant reassurance. It feels safe even in silence. It doesn't create dependency. It builds trust. Attachment, on the other hand, is about filling a void. It thrives on control and predictability. It seeks to possess, not to connect. Attachment says, you can't leave me because I wouldn't know who I am without you. And when attachment is mistaken for love, we don't form relationships. We form emotional contracts based on fear, not freedom. Think about how you feel when you're apart from someone you say you love. Are you calm, trusting, secure in the bond even when there's space? Or are you anxious, restless, constantly checking your phone, reading into every word, every pause, every change in tone? That anxious energy is not love. It's a sign of attachment. And understanding this difference can change everything. When we're attached, we project responsibility onto the other person. We expect them to meet our emotional needs, to fix our insecurities, to always be available. But the truth is, no one can do that for us, not consistently, not perfectly. That's a job only we can do. And when we learn to do it for ourselves, we stop clinging to people in the hope that they'll save us. Love doesn't feel like desperation. It doesn't demand the other person behave a certain way to keep you emotionally regulated. Love is calm. It's steady. It allows for disappointment without unraveling. It allows for independence without threat. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you can deeply care about someone and still be emotionally attached in a way that's not healthy. You can feel strong feelings and still recognize that those feelings are coming from a place of fear, not grounded connection. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. And it also means you have work to do. Not on getting them to love more, but on understanding what you're actually looking for beneath the attachment. The moment we can see this clearly is the moment we start making better choices. Not out of fear, but from awareness. You stop chasing people who give you crumbs of attention. You stop tolerating relationships that keep you on edge. You stop mistaking cost for passion and anxiety for love. You begin to choose peace over drama. You choose people who make you feel safe, not just excited. You no longer need someone to fill your emotional gaps because you've begun to fill them yourself. That's what emotional maturity looks like. It's not about becoming cold or detached. It's about learning to love without losing yourself. It's about realizing that real love supports your growth. It doesn't stifle it. So if you're wondering whether you're in love or just emotionally attached, ask yourself, am I here because of love or because I'm afraid of what it means to be without this person? That one question, asked honestly, can be the beginning of emotional freedom. And from that freedom, real love, healthy, stable, grounded love, finally has room to grow. For many people, the word boundary feels harsh. It sounds like a wall, like a rejection, like a confrontation we're not ready to have. We worry that if we set a boundary, we'll upset someone, disappoint them, or push them away. And so we stay silent, we tolerate what hurts us. We convince ourselves that being kind means being available, agreeable, and emotionally open, no matter the cost to ourselves. But here's what we often forgetting: a boundary is not a rejection of others. It's an act of protection for ourselves. It's not about creating distance for the sake of ego. It's about creating space for our emotional health. Without boundaries, we don't have connection. We have obligation. We have resentment. We have a version of ourselves that is constantly shrinking to keep the peace. When you are emotionally dependent, boundaries can feel especially threatening. You fear that if you draw a line, the other person might leave, that they'll see you as selfish, cold, or difficult. So instead, you overextend. You overgive. You let things slide that hurt you. You become emotionally flexible to the point of self-abandonment. And all of this is done in the name of love. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's sacrifice. And sacrifice, when not chosen freely, becomes a form of emotional erosion. It wears you down. It makes you feel invisible in the very relationships where you long to feel seen. The first step to setting boundaries without guilt is to understand that guilt is often a learned response, not a reflection of wrongdoing. Many of us were taught that saying no is unkind. That putting ourselves first is selfish. That other people's comfort is more important than our clarity. But what if we challenge that narrative? What if saying no was actually one of the kindest things you could do for yourself and for others? Boundaries are honest. They say, this is what I can give. This is what I need to feel safe. This is what I will no longer tolerate. And that clarity allows other people to meet you where you truly are, not where you pretend to be. The truth is, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries are often the ones most offended when you start to set them. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, your peace, your energy, your emotional integrity. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you love someone less. It means you love yourself enough to stop leaking your energy into spaces that leave you depleted. It means you respect your own capacity. It means you recognize that your well-being isn't a resource for others to drain. There will be moments when setting a boundary feels uncomfortable. That's normal. You might feel doubt, second-guess yourself, or worry about the reaction. But growth rarely feels easy, and emotional independence requires discomfort. It requires the willingness to feel misunderstood in the short term for the sake of long-term alignment with your truth. One way to make this easier is to approach boundaries not as walls, but as doorways. They don't close people out. They invite the right people in. Because the people who truly respect and value will honor your boundaries. They won't punish you for expressing your needs. They'll thank you for your clarity. And even if someone doesn't like your boundary, that doesn't make the boundary wrong. It just means it's doing its job, revealing who is willing to meet you in a space of mutual respect. Boundaries are also not just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself, yes to your time, yes to your mental health, yes to relationships that feel reciprocal instead of draining, yes to emotional responsibility, where you are no longer held hostage by the fear of someone else's reaction. Setting boundaries without guilt is a process. It takes practice. You might stumble, you might over-explain or retreat. That's okay. What matters is that you keep returning to the truth. You are allowed to protect your peace. You don't need to justify your limits to anyone. You don't need to apologize for choosing yourself. And you don't need to be everything for everyone to be enough. Boundaries are not about building a better version of yourself for others. They are about creating a safer space for you to be fully, unapologetically who you already are. So the next time you feel that hesitation, that pull to put someone else's comfort above your own, pause and ask, am I honoring myself, or am I abandoning myself to be accepted? Let that answer guide you. Because when you start setting boundaries without guilt, you stop living from fear, and you start living from freedom. Solitude is often misunderstood. In a world that constantly pushes us to connect, to be available, to stay plugged in, being alone can feel like something's wrong. We scroll through other people's lives, see them surrounded by laughter, company, affection, and we begin to wonder, why am I alone? What's missing in me? But being alone and being lonely are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of yourself. One feels empty. The other is full of possibility. Reconnect. When you are emotionally dependent on others, solitude feels threatening. It feels like silence where there should be noise, like absence where there should be attention. You search for someone to talk to, someone to lean on, someone to distract you from the discomfort of your own thoughts. But what if that discomfort is actually an invitation? What if being alone is not a void to fill, but a space to discover who you really are? You see, inner strength doesn't come from being surrounded by others. It comes from facing yourself when no one else is around. It comes from choosing to sit in your own presence and realizing that you are not lacking. You're just unfamiliar with yourself. In solitude, you hear your own voice more clearly. Not the one shaped by expectation, not the one trained to please, but the deeper voice, the one that knows what you want, what you value, what you fear. That voice gets drowned out in the noise of dependency. But in the quiet of solitude, it starts to speak. And if you're willing to listen, it will guide you to strength you didn't know you had. Most people try to build strength through external reinforcement. They seek compliments, likes, attention, praise, anything to confirm their value. But true strength doesn't need validation. It doesn't rise or fall based on one's presence or absence. It's rooted in self-respect, in emotional resilience, in knowing that no matter who walks away, you will not abandon yourself. Solitude is where that self-trust is built. When you're alone, you start to learn how to soothe your own anxiety, how to comfort your own pain, how to regulate your own emotions. You begin to realize you can be your own source of calm, your own source of safety. And the more you practice that, the less you need someone else to complete you. This doesn't mean we stop needing people altogether. We're human. We are wired for connection. But there's a difference between choosing connection and clinging to it. When you've built inner strength through solitude, you no longer chase people out of fear. You no longer stay in places that hurt you just because you're afraid of being alone. You no longer hand over your emotional stability to someone else and hope they handle it gently. Instead, you show up in relationships from a place of fullness. You're no longer desperate for attention. You're open to love. You're no longer reactive. You're grounded. You no longer tolerate chaos just to avoid silence. You've made peace with your own company. That's what emotional independence looks like. And it's not built through constant connection. It's built in those moments when you sit with yourself and realize, I'm okay here. Maybe not perfect, maybe not healed, but okay, steady, present. Solitude is also where creativity lives. Reflection, clarity. In the stillness, you start to see the patterns you couldn't see before. You start to notice what drains you and what nourishes you. You start to reconnect with passions and dreams that got buried under the weight of emotional noise. You begin to understand that you are not just someone's partner or friend or supporter. You are a whole human being capable of joy, peace, and purpose on your own. The more time you spend with yourself, the less likely you are to betray yourself in the presence of others. Because now you know what your soul sounds like, you know what peace feels like, and anything that disrupts that becomes easier to walk away from. So don't fear solitude, embrace it. Let it teach you, let it strengthen you. Let it remind you that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Because when you can be alone and still feel whole, you become unshakable. No longer defined by who stays or who leaves. No longer dependent on others to feel worthy. You've built something stronger than emotional attachment. You've built self-respect, self-worth. It's a concept that gets thrown around often, but rarely do we stop to ask ourselves what it really means or where it actually comes from. For many of us, self-worth has become a mirror, a reflection of how others see us, treat us, respond to us. We measure our value by the attention we receive, the approval we earn, or the roles we play in people's lives. If they love us, we feel worthy. If they leave, we feel broken. But that's not self-worth, that's borrowed worth, temporary, unstable, conditional. And when your sense of value depends on other people, you become emotionally dependent. You contort yourself to fit what they want. You question yourself when they pull away. You wait for someone else to define who you are instead of owning that definition yourself. Redefining your self-worth means taking that power back. It means realizing that your value does not increase when someone chooses you, and it does not decrease when someone doesn't. You are not more worthy because someone pays attention to you, and you are not less worthy because they ignore you. You are enough, not because of who loves you, but because you are here, a live human evolving. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, one that starts with noticing how you talk to yourself when you feel rejected, unseen, or unimportant. That inner voice, that running commentary wasn't born with you. It was shaped by childhood, shaped by culture, shaped by experiences where your worth felt conditional. Maybe you were praised for being quiet, agreeable, helpful. Maybe you were told you were too much, too emotional, too sensitive. Over time, you began to link your worth to how well you performed, how little you needed, how much others liked you. But what if worth was not something to be proven, but something to be remembered? You were not born doubting yourself. That came later. And what came later can be unlearned. Redefining your self-worth means you stop tying your value to outcomes. Not every relationship will work out. Not every person will treat you well. Not every opportunity will be yours. But none of that changes who you are. Self-worth says, even when things don't go my way, I am still enough. Even when I fail, I am still whole. Even when I am alone, I am still valuable. When you embrace that, something shifts. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop begging for scraps of validation. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for you in the first place. Because now you know your worth is not up for negotiation. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or detached. True self-worth is humble. It's quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. It allows you to walk away from what doesn't serve you, not with bitterness, but with peace. It allows you to speak your truth, not for attention, but for alignment. It allows you to love yourself, not in a surface-level #worthy kind of way, but in a deep, committed way that says, I will not abandon myself for the comfort of others. And here's the paradox: when you stop trying to earn worth, you start to attract people and opportunities that actually align with it. You stop settling, you stop performing. You become magnetic not because you're trying to be loved, but because you've already chosen to love yourself. So how do you redefine your self-worth in real time? You set standards for how you want to be treated, and you hold to them. You say no when something violates your peace. You let go of people who only show up when it's convenient. You invest in things that nourish you, your growth, your passions, your mental health. You stop making excuses for disrespect. And most of all, you remind yourself every single day that you don't have to earn the right to exist. You were not put on this earth to be liked by everyone. You were put here to live truthfully, boldly, and fully. And that begins the moment you decide that you are already enough. Not someday, not when they text back, not when you feel less anxious, but now. Your worth is not waiting for someone else to see it. It's waiting for you to claim it. And once you do, emotional dependence begins to fall away, not because others stop disappointing you, but because your identity is no longer built on how they treat you. It's built on how you treat yourself. And that changes everything.